Education and employment are basic human rights that bring with them the promise of greater equity as well as sustainable, peaceful and productive lives and societies. The third annual Global Education and Skills Forum will bring together leaders from government, business and education, as well as leading academics, social entrepreneurs and other thought leaders to focus on the research, models and mechanisms that can create quality education and employment for all.
Your Excellencies, welcome to Dubai, welcome to the Global Education and Skills Forum. It's customary to start by these speeches by saying, these opening remarks by saying, friends, distinguished guests. But today I will make a departure to that opening line. I'm going to start off by welcoming my family. It is a family simply because over the last 3 years, many of you have traveled on this journey, and I don't mean just to Dubai, but this journey of global education and learning with us. This event has come along in leaps and bounds, I think you'll agree. Our first year was simply just 3 years ago. This is our third event. And when we convened in this hall 3 years ago, we talked about public-private partnerships in education and the importance of how we learn from each other to mitigate some of the consequences, unintended consequences of these partnerships. So the world can perhaps have better models of education delivery and access around the world. In our second year, what we did was we built on the first year and we decided to focus on three particular themes: education, employment, and equity. Now, for both these years, it was fundamental to talk about the macro issue. And we decided for this conference, it would be a mistake, actually, to do the same thing. So rather than use this particular word, I want to encourage every single one of us to think in terms of solutions for this conference. It's very simple. You know, we can all sit here and talk about problems. In fact, many of us, and I'm embarrassed to say, some of us make a living out of it. But we owe it to humanity to talk in terms of solutions because there's a lot of great stuff happening around the world. This is the Global Education and Skills Forum. All of you here are change makers, are committed to that process. So one thing that I ask for all of you is when you are sitting in the plenaries, in the panels, in the ideas labs, in the design labs, in any interaction over the next 2 days, challenge every single speaker, if they speak in terms of problems, to talk about solutions and what they see on the ground. Please make that a priority, and that has to be the mantra of this conference.
For as many of our children who are growing up in a globalized, connected and social world, there are millions more who don't have access to quality education or the skills to prosper. At the Global Education and Skills Forum 2015, questions such as what should children be learning? How can we reach the most marginalized learners? How do children learn lifelong skills and ways of thinking that are essential to succeed in modern workplaces? These questions and many more are tackled.
Well, you know, what if the world would meet the Millennium Goals? No? 2015, getting everybody up to a minimum level of baseline skills. Level 2 on our assessment. Let's go back. We can actually estimate this. If you basically look at the lower middle income countries, we could have the value of improvement is about 6 times the GDP of countries for just getting people in schools today to this baseline level. This is the magnitude of the resources that we talk about if we were able to generate that level of improvement. If we just keep going on getting more children into school, that's also an important challenge, particularly in the lower middle income countries, it's still going to generate twice the level of GDP over the lifetime of those students. And then, you know, if we did both, we're talking about 10 times today's GDP over the next generation. It's not as high, you know, if you're in the upper middle income countries, in the high income countries, no? There you generate a little bit less because education is more advanced, but the numbers are still huge. And essentially, you know, the increase in GDP that we would be seeing would still be more than what we spent on education today. Think about it. Education would be free for everyone without government investment if we were able to raise the level of quality just to the minimum level for every child.
Over 2 days, the Global Education and Skills Forum will meet to collaborate, network, debate, and discuss real solutions around 5 themed pillars. And these 5 themed pillars are The learner in the 21st century, the effective teacher in society, leadership for 21st century education, unleashing sustainable innovation, the private sector and education. The climax of the 3rd Annual Global Education and Skills Forum is a teacher who would receive 1 million prize over 10 years on the condition that they remain in the teaching for at least 5 of them. The organizers of the award, dubbed the Nobel Prize for Teaching, will provide financial counseling to the winner.
Sheer delight, source of pride, and such a pleasure to share it with these 9 remarkable teachers. I will never forget them or this, or the faint sounds of my children screaming in a classroom back in Maine. It's a wonderful night. Our school is very low tuition, and we offer a lot of tuition assistance so that we can keep a really rich mix, socioeconomic mix of children. Most of this money will go into tuition assistance, but also because our school is a resource for the whole country, the whole United States, for what books kids should read. Our kids are always blogging and listing and recommending. We need to just keep our books current so that our kids can keep on reading 40 books a year, but also so the rest of the children in America can stay current with the advice of our kids.
His Excellency Paul Kagame, President, Republic of Rwanda, during an interview mentioned that education is about dignity. Even if you have problems today, eventually you should be able to stand on your own 2 feet.
I mean, given the Rwandan story, we see a lot of, in the West where I live, we read a lot of media about the progress that your leadership has actually resulted in. Can you tell us a little bit about how the MDGs have fared in Rwanda?
Well, I'll tell you how they have worked. I think that is the more interesting part of the story. We have seen improvements in education, both access and covering. If you look at, say, basic primary education, where the enrollment rate is at 97%. That is huge. So much as we have had access and scaling up on this access, we have now started focusing on quality so that we don't just have access without quality. Things have worked. If you look at health indicators, under 5 mortality or mother's health and prevention of death for the mothers has made huge progress, very significant globally. In fact, the change that has taken place in the recent times is probably at the fastest rate anywhere in the world.
The Global Teacher Prize winner, Nancy Atwell, USA, Global Teacher Prize 2015 said, "I love the challenges and I love my teaching life. I hope to convey to young people considering teaching that it is a privilege." During the State of Education Today's address by Andrej Leka, Director for Education and Skills, OECD, and member of the advisory board, Vaki Foundation, he mentioned how Ghana's education level is very low.
If you think about, the lowest performing country here, Ghana, it could have 40 times its current level of wealth over the next generation. That's the total volume of this. So you convert it into dollars, you talk about $4,000 billion. It's very hard to think about in those terms, trillions of dollars. Of course, I realize the challenge for Ghana is massive. This is not going to happen overnight. It's going to require maybe 20, 30 years. But still, the promise in fixing sort of those skills is very significant.
The Breakfast Show had an exclusive interview with the Deputy Minister of Education, Honorable Okudzeto Ablakwa, and Dr. Gordon Garver, Project Director, Africa, Vaki Foundation, on his project, Making Ghanaian Girls Great.
school people said that they found mathematics to be a difficult subject. They saw it as an impossible subject to pass. So it all boils down eventually to the teachers, how the teachers will teach the subject. So what we are doing is that we're getting Professor Anko and Professor Alote of the African Institute of Mathematical Studies to have these special boot camps for maths teachers and to bring them to knowledge on new methodology, how to make the subject more interesting, the best environment to adapt, and to make it more practical so that children can relate to it and can begin to, at the very lower level, develop interest in mathematics. So that's what we are doing. We are also providing more textbooks, math textbooks. We have recently achieved our core textbook ratio. That's the people to core textbook ratio. It used to be just 1:1. Now it's 1:3. So maths, English, science, we have been able to provide enough textbooks thanks to the support we receive from DFID to carry that out.
It's important to keep measuring the results, and one of the big changes will be, for me, is persuading the parents and the students themselves that studying maths doesn't need to be very hard. You can, it is a subject you can learn, you can do well at, and you shouldn't just instantly think that I'm bad at maths, therefore I'll never get better and I'll just give up. It's worth persevering because it's such a critical subject for all of your other learning and your numeracy for the rest of your life. So that's one thing. I think some of the initiatives that have already started from the government on mathematics boot camps for teachers, they're very good ideas, and a lot more subject knowledge teacher training could be done. I also think maybe some reprioritization inside the schools to help children who have fallen behind maths to catch up. Some remedial classes might also be helpful.
Other educational quotes from some honorable speakers.
We're all talking about education in the classroom, but people don't just get educated nowadays in the classroom, right? They're taking influences from all sorts of different quarters, from the internet, from informal education systems, and I think, wherever intolerance is taught, you've got to go out and confront it. And one of the things my foundation is now working on is how you get a global compact on education, where every country accepts its responsibility to ensure their education systems, informal and formal, educate towards religious tolerance and root out religious prejudice. And I think this is really important, because otherwise you've got millions of young people being taught a very narrow view of the world and often a prejudiced view of the world. And that can happen even in a country like ours if, I hope and assume it's not what they're taught in the school, but obviously they're getting those influences from outside the school.
Was the awarding of the Global Teacher Prize, because for me that begins to firmly raise the profile of teachers as a valued profession globally, and this is a timely reminder as the world is facing an increasing shortage of well-qualified graduates who are actually choosing the profession as a career for life.
Now, the major problem for education in my country today is the fact that there's so much disparity. Disparity between regions, disparity between girls and boys, just disparity. And we have to close the gap. We have to eliminate disparity. That will be one thing. Universality is where we must go in education. And then we can talk about a number of other things, quality, science, technology, but we need the fundamental universality of education.
Global education does at the moment have many challenges. The first and obvious one, of course, is that in the less developed parts of the world, a large number of children are still uneducated and people. So they have to do the traditional education development thing. But I would say overall there is a much bigger, more difficult problem for education, which education has to handle, which is educating young people and thereby the adults later about harmony. Different communities belonging to ethnic, religious and various other groups, language and all that, living together in harmony and teaching them the importance of diversity, that to celebrate diversity rather than reject it, and to accept it and live with it. That is, one has to do a lot of things, and it is the education system that has the biggest responsibility for this.
Let's forget for the moment we're the government, and let's just think as parents. Forget being politicians, think as parents. What do we as parents want for our children? And if you start from that point of view, what do I want for my child, you're probably likely to get a better answer than if you say, right, I'm a politician analyzing this system. So if you start from that perspective, and that's why the types of things I'm talking about are important, because that's what we want for our children, so that's what we should be putting in our education system.
On the kidnapping of the girls in Nigeria and the horrific terrorist attack on the school in Peshawar, Pakistan, there seems to be a frightening and growing trend of treating both schools and students as legitimate targets in political and religious conflict. What can leaders and international communities do to protect schools and learners? His Excellency Olusegun Obasanjo, former president Nigeria, and his panelists had a lot to say concerning the learner under attack, how we can protect our schools. During the forum, majority of the audience agreed and voted for both boys and girls being together in schools and not being separated.
I believe that the international community leaders, particularly political leaders, have got to treat the disease. I see the attack on schools, particularly in areas where we have terrorists, Nigeria, Pakistan, Kenya, and such other places. We have to treat the disease. And the situation, of course, in the countries where we have terrorist activities is slightly different from the situation in a country like the United States of America, where the insecurity in schools, the attack of schools, is essentially due to the ease with which you can have access to guns, rather than the issue of terrorists. So I believe that the community, international community, and the international leaders and national leaders have to deal with the issue of cause of terrorism.
I personally feel that we need to understand that terrorism arises from two different things, and in my opinion, number one is illiteracy, which brings us back to education, and number two is poverty. These issues are very tightly connected. Like there is this statistic which says that if we educate one child, we are in reality bringing 12 out of poverty. So what I feel we need to do is that, on one hand, we need to make as many schools, make more schools, and we need to realize that education is accessible to every person. And then, at the same time, I think that world leaders have, and international community has a great responsibility in understanding that terrorists, we have to get over the political agenda every thing every person has, and we need to understand that now, to make this world sustainable, to make the future prosperous, we need to eliminate these factors, eliminate terrorism.
But President Obasanjo, just a vote yes or no, are you in favor of gender separation in schools, or you want them to be together?
They must be together. In life they are together, in home they are together. Why should they be separated in school? They must be together.
And because we didn't have enough time, we haven't had audience questions. We had 10 minutes cut off from our time anyway. So let me just ask for a show of hands from the audience. So audience participates. Those who want genders to be together in school, please raise your hands. That's almost everybody. And those who do not?
No, not yet.
Well, at least, it tells you that we have a completely co-ed audience right here. So thank you very much. You are great ambassadors for safer schools and good modern education.
The third annual Global Education and Skills Forum came to a wonderful end, and hopefully in 2016, we'll have a fantastic Ghanaian teacher enter the Global Teacher Prize.
To